Hey, it's Ben from the Trello team at Fog Creek Software. We've made a few videos for Trello on mobile devices and wanted to share a few of the challenges and insights we've experienced along the way. The first project was a narrative video to accompany the launch of the Trello app for iPad. Before we even had a story, we had to figure out how to shoot video of a mobile device. This turned out to be a little harder than we anticipated. When you look at a phone or iPad, what you see with your eyes doesn't exactly translate to what the camera sensor picks up. We did a lot of experimenting with Justin's Canon 7D camera to figure out what would work. So without going too deep into DSLR video techniques, here are a few things we learned. We kept the shutter speed between 1/30th and 1/60th of a second and adjusted the aperture and ISO accordingly. We usually kept the aperture at about 2.8 and used manual focus for everything. And though we used a mix of lenses to get a few different looks, a cheap 50mm lens on a Canon Rebel probably would have worked just fine. The brightness of the device itself is really important. We found that the screen looked clearer on camera when the brightness on the device was a little bit lower. For mobile, high-resolution screens are your friend. When we were shooting a video of the iPad, we found that the ones with a Retina display looked much better than the iPad mini that we had, which had a non-Retina display. Low-resolution screens can introduce an unwanted effect called moiré, which can be really distracting in your video. We learned to minimize moiré by shooting at a slight angle. This causes the moiré pattern to only appear on part of the device instead of the whole thing. We mixed wide shots of the device with close-up shots of the device. While this meant we had to record more takes, it left us more options when editing the video, and the close-ups made it so much easier to read the text on the screen. While I was working through the technical issues, Tina was coming up with a script. Since we wanted to create more of an emotional connection that people might want to share, we decided to go with a narrative format that showed people using different Trello boards in different environments. For actors, we just used other Fog Creek staff and 2 of the coaches at the gym I go to. There was no spoken dialogue, and the focus was usually on the device, so we didn't really worry that we didn't have professional talent. Well, LJ actually is a professional actor in addition to being a fitness coach, but that's it. Once it came to the actual shoot, we set up the camera on a cheap tripod, pointed it at the device, and took several takes. We used the Trello app on the iPad to check off the shots as we went. It was a huge help having a list of shots before we started shooting. When it came to editing the video, I started a free trial of Premiere Pro, and it took me about a week to get it done. This was my first time using Premiere, so I spent a ton of time on Google trying to learn different techniques I could use to pull off the video. One super useful feature that's worth pointing out for shooting mobile is stabilization. Premiere, After Effects, and Final Cut all have this feature, and it can be a great way to make the screen readable when it's otherwise really shaky. Overall, we were really happy with the video and glad that we had it at launch. Our most recent video took a much different approach. We decided to make a video about the Trello Android app since the Google Play Store lets you embed a video directly in the store listing. We wanted this video to be much more direct, less about telling a story and more about simply showing what you can do with the app. We had a few new technical challenges to set up this video. Most of what we learned for the iPad video still apply when it came to aperture, shutter speed, screen brightness, etc. The key was taking enough practice shots until we found something I liked. To help the camera point directly at the floor, I bought a tripod with a sidearm that can swivel down 90 degrees. While pointing the camera directly at the phone, I adjusted the focus to be ever so slightly out of focus, which makes the text on screen a little bit easier to read. For the white recording surface, I just found an old sign that had white on the back and turned it over. I didn't get too fancy with lights. I just used lights from a cheap lighting kit and turned them sideways. I added a piece of white styrofoam board as a reflective surface. Again, the key was to keep practicing until I got it right. To keep the phone from moving, I used some modeling clay attached to the back of the phone. The concept of the Trello for Android video ended up being pretty simple, with one interesting challenge. While a Trello board makes sense in the browser, it's harder to understand on the phone because you only get to see one list at a time. To get around that, we show a mock-up of the full board and then fade to the real-time video. This gives you a sense of the list in context of the greater application. At the end of the video, you see a shot of Trello on different devices. We used a site called Placeit by Breezy, which will take any screenshot and sub it in for a mock-up of the device. Another key goal for this video was to keep it under a minute. I ended up throwing out a ton of extra footage when in the beginning I thought I needed to show everything. It turns out you only need to show enough to give somebody a basic idea of what your app does and how it's going to help them solve their problems. Looking at the overall retention graph for this video, we see about a 75% engagement. I should note, however, that we're not as concerned if someone doesn't make it to the end. This video is in the Play Store. If the viewer stops watching, that could mean they learned enough about Trello to skip the rest of the video and then go download the app, which is exactly what we want. There are tons of different ways to showcase your mobile app. You can always hire somebody to do the video for you, but hopefully you've learned a few things here to help you do the video yourself.